In 2004, millions of players entered a world that didn't just feel like a game. It felt alive. Cities were crowded. Guilds formed overnight. And for many players, this wasn't just something you played. It became a place you lived in. But World of Warcraft didn't start as the giant we remember. It started as a risk. A question. Could an online world actually feel like a world? Before World of Warcraft, online games already existed, but they weren't easy to enter. Games like EverQuest and Ultima Online were complex, slow, sometimes punishing. They required patience, and for many players they felt distant, not welcoming. Blizzard saw this. At the time they were known for something else entirely: strategy games. The Warcraft series had already built a rich fantasy world. Players knew the factions, the characters, the conflicts, but that world was still limited. You could control armies, but you couldn't live inside it. So Blizzard asked a different question. What if players didn't just command this world? What if they became part of it? But turning a strategy universe into a living world wasn't simple. It required something most MMOs didn't have yet: accessibility. So Blizzard made a decision that would define everything. They would simplify, not remove depth, but remove friction. From the start, World of Warcraft was designed differently. It wasn't about difficulty first, it was about flow. Quests guided you forward. The world was readable. You always knew where to go. And for the first time in an MMO, you weren't lost. This changed everything. Players who had never touched an MMO before could suddenly understand it. And that matters more than it sounds, because games don't go just from depth, they go from access. Instead of forcing players to adapt to the system, World of Warcraft adapted to the player. But accessibility alone doesn't create a phenomenon. Something else had to happen. The world had to feel populated, alive. When World of Warcraft launched, players didn't just log in, they gathered. Cities became meeting points. Trade chat filled with conversations. Guilds formed naturally. And slowly, a new kind of experience emerged. This wasn't just multiplayer, it was shared space. You didn't just complete quests, you remembered the people you met, the healer who saved your group, the guild that carried you through your first raid. They weren't scripted moments, they were human ones. And that created something powerful, because when players start forming connections, they don't just play longer, they stay. And that's exactly what happened. By 2005, World of Warcraft was growing fast. Millions of players joined, and for many of them, this was their first MMO. Leveling wasn't just progression, it was a journey. You walked everywhere, you learned the map, you remembered places, and that created something subtle. The world felt grounded. Every zone had weight, because reaching it took time. Dungeons required effort. Groups didn't form instantly. Reputation mattered. If you played with someone, you might see them again. But as the world grew, Blizzard faced a problem. How do you expand something that already feels complete? Their answer came in 2007, the Burning Crusade. It introduced something new: Outland. But this wasn't just a new area. It was a shift in how players experienced the world. For the first time, players didn't just explore Azeroth, they left it behind. The Dark Portal wasn't just a gateway, it was a line between two eras. And everything started to change. Flying mounts allowed players to move freely. Above the world, across it. The ground, once central to exploration, became optional. Progression became more structured, more focused, more directed. When movement becomes faster, when systems become smoother, what happens to the world itself? At first, it goes even faster. By 2008, World of Warcraft reached something rare. Not just success, alignment. Wrath of the Lich King wasn't just another expansion. It was the payoff of everything that came before. Because players already knew the story. Arthas, the Lich King, wasn't new. He was familiar. From Warcraft 3. Players had watched his fall. And now they could face him. That changed everything. This wasn't just content, it was continuation. The world didn't feel random, it felt connected. North End wasn't just a new zone, it felt like a destination. Raids became more structured, more accessible, more repeatable. And for the first time, systems began to support players at scale. The Dungeon Finder, instant grouping, less waiting. And this is where things became more interesting. Because what made the game easier also began to change how players interacted. You didn't always need to know people anymore. You could just queue. The world was still full, but the connections started to shift. So even at its peak, something underneath was changing. But in that moment, none of that mattered, because this was the height. Subscriptions peaked, guilds were active, raids were full. And for many players, this is the version of World of Warcraft they remember. Not just because it was good, but because everything worked. By 2010, World of Warcraft wasn't just successful, it was dominant. Millions of players. A world that felt alive. A system that worked. But the question from the beginning still remained. Could a world like this stay the same? Because what made World of Warcraft powerful was also what made it fragile. It had to keep evolving, and in doing so, it would begin to change. The world that once felt alive was about to be rebuilt. New case files release every Monday, Wednesday and Friday.